Hi guys, me again. So today I'm going to be talking about the Visual State Manager in Xamarin Forms. The Visual State Manager has been around for a while, but it's pretty recent to Xamarin Forms. So what happens is, or what the State Manager basically is all about is, it says you are able to set different states to any of your visual elements, and then you can make or trigger these elements depending on whatever logic you have in your code at runtime or whenever. And what this means is I can decide what I want to set this state, and whenever I trigger this particular state for this element, do all of these things that is in this state. Now by default, the Xamarin Forms defines a group called common state for every element. So by default, every element has a state called normal, disabled, focused, and selected, and which the state manager triggers by default for every element. So normally is if you add a button to your view, you have is firing the normal state. If you set a button's disabled or enabled property to false, you basically trigger the disabled state. If you start typing in your entry, you've basically triggered the focus state, and so on and so forth. So I'm going to give a quick example of how this works. So I'm just going to paste a dummy code here. I will run through it as well. So we have a stack layout, pretty basic, and then within the stack layout we have just one element, which is an entry. Now this entry has a state group. We have the Visual State Manager, the Visual State groups, where you can define whatever groups you have in it. And inside the groups, I have my first group, which is a state group. I can have multiple groups within it. Depends on how complex or complicated you want your triggers and your states to be. Now by default, I mentioned that, or the documentation did mention that there are some normal, focused, and disabled selected states. What this means is these states are fired by default based on different things that were happening within the R. So I'm here saying is in the Visual State normal, what I want to do is set the property of this entry to normal state text. When its focus is fired, set the background color to green, and when it's disabled, currently I'm doing nothing. So if you can see in the previewer here, the normal state is already being fired, which is why this setter is working. So I can, if I have this as well here, the background color has changed as well too. So by default, the normal state is being fired. This is like automatically. So in the focus state is, for example, if we start imputing text, I can run this and hopefully to be clearer. So when you start imputing text in your entry, the focus state is being triggered automatically, and whatever properties you set there is updated or is set. And why this is building or running, one thing I want to point out is, one thing to notice is these states in a state group are all exclusive of each other. So you can't have a normal and focus state firing at the same time. You can have either normal or focus or disabled, but no combination of any of them. So that way is, if my normal state, if I trigger my normal state, it says this property, and then I proceed to trigger the focus state, it unsets this property and then sets the new property for the focus state. This is the building. Yeah, so as I was saying, and if I'm in the focus state and then I set the background property, once I go back to the normal state, the focus state is unset. So here I have my normal state. If I start imputing, then it goes to the focus state, because we say in the focus state background color should be green. And if you notice, the inside text is no longer there because it unsets this value. So all of these states are exclusive of each other. If I'm out, I've left the focus state, I'm back to the normal state, and then this is fired. So this is kind of like, it can help explain the basics of how this works. But to make this one be fun, if it's just this, I need to be able to like trigger this when I want to. So this is also possible too. You can have your own normal different states. So I can have a red state, for example, and what I want when this is fired is, I want the background color to be red, and I can have a green state, and I want this to be green. To to make it even, I can have another state which is called, I know you guessed it, blue, and the background color is going to be blue. So I will want so this is my entries. It's going to have different states. So because of these are not default states, there's nothing happening here. So I can have the background color by default to be say what's aqua, and this is the normal state that has been fired here. And then we need something to be able to trigger this. We can add a button, just normal button, and clicked new event handler button clicked. This button text is going to be change state. Cool. Then we will have to, so for the three states we can use one button, but for simplicity let's have three button clicked, button clicked 1, button clicked 2, change state to red, change state to green, and then change state blue. So then we give this entry a name so we can identify it wherever we want. Main entry. Good. So we have all we want here. Now in the code in the back, we can decide to do what we want to do. So our this is a little bit. So in our main button, what we want to do is we can call the Visual State Manager and then call the go to state option. For the first element, it takes which element you want to trigger a state for. In our case, is the main entry. And what state do we want to go to? We want to go to red. In our second one, we want to go to blue. And in our third one, we want to go to no, the other way around. We want to go to green. So RGB, because RGB. Yep. So basically we have this, we're going to red state, green state, and blue state. And then if I run this time around now, so now I have my custom trigger. So I'm saying whenever I click this button for main entry, go to whatever state that is called red and then set its properties. And then in the green state, it sets its properties as well too. So if I go to the red state, that didn't work. Green worked. Why didn't the red state work? It's called red state. So yeah, so this is even a good example. It explains what I want. So now I'm going to a state called red, but there's no red state in this in this element, so nothing happens basically. Now in the green state, we're saying set the background color to green, and that's what is happening here. And then the blue state, we're saying set background color to blue, and then this is fine. So we can set this state to whatever we want it to be, and not just the color. So let's say red. We can fix our name and then try this again. So we can set and then we can add multiple setters here. Property is text, and then we want the value to be I am in the red state. The red state. So we have this and we have this. So I'm in the green state here and I'm in the blue state here. So meaning we can have multiple properties, and these properties are all exclusive of each other, such that we can't have two. If we're in the red state, why does the red state? What is wrong with the red state? Right. Okay, something is wrong with you. Change state blue, changes. Why are the properties not being updated? So now it works. So my file wasn't saved before. So this is with Xamarin Hot Reload. So maybe I'll make a video about that later. It updates the application in runtime. So in the red state, I'm in the red state. The green state, it unset whatever was there before and then set the new properties. So with that, you can imagine tons of different things you can do with it. Now, interestingly, is in this case is, let's say we have a form or we have multiple elements, and we need to set these groups as well for different elements. So if we have like a form, for example, come on, expand. So if we were to have a form that has multiple text, label, name is main label, and so with this is, you can imagine if we need to set these groups for multiple, then you can have this group is already taking close to, I don't know, more than 20 or close to 20 lines. So if you're going to have it in multiple elements, then you're going to have a whole lot of issues, because your file is going to be like 10,000 lines of code. So what you can do is you can also set this as a style property in the top, and then assign to different elements for all entries or for all labels. But in this particular case, what I want to talk about is if you need to change the state of another element from some other element. So that's where it gets tricky. So if I'm in the red state, I need to change this label as well. How do I do that? This still allows you to do that by adding a new setter, and this time there's a target name, which is the name of whatever property you want to work with. It may not be here, I can't really figure out why this is happening, but it's there, believe me. And then you properties, what we want to set in the property. So now in this case, we can't just set the property, we have to like put the full path. So we want to change the text. Here is label.text, because we are referencing a different property outside of this element. So label.text, and then the value is I am red. So now this allows us to change the value or the element or the properties of a different element outside the current element you're working with. So this can be it gets in handy, because before this, what we would need to do is, if we didn't have this property, this target name property, which is pretty recent, what we would have needed to do is then we would have to go to the label and then add the state group, and then in the red state we would then update whatever I want to update. And you can imagine this getting bloated, a whole lot of redundancy everywhere, which is unnecessary. So this is really handy. So now we can say in the red state we want to change this to red, and when we're in the green state we want this, and when we're in the blue state we want this I am green, not Groot, I am not Groot. In this case I am blue. So what we are saying now is this is, actually I didn't need to end the app with hot reload, I could have done this. Yeah, so what we're saying is, in this state manager, which is for the entry, whenever you're in the red state, find an entry called, or find an element called label, and then set the label.text property to I am red. Same for green and same for blue as well. We can see how this where's the error? Target name was not found in type setter. Let's see, did I miss a type spelling there? In the documentation, says target name. Let's see, I have to, so this is in the latest Xamarin, so I need to do an update on my NuGet. So this is going to take a while. Updating packages in the solution, blah 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 blah. Anytime today. So previously we did not have this target name property. So you would have to like add this group to whatever elements you need to change, and then trigger for each of those elements individually. So like you can imagine the complexity is if you have a form, a validation form per se, with 2 entries, username, password, and then a warning text, and then you're in an invalid state, for example, where the user has entered maybe wrong email format. You have to trigger this state for all of these elements. But with this now, you don't have to do that. You can just trigger one and then set the properties of different elements in this one setter. So this is taking its time. I don't know why it's slow. How many times is it doing this? For 3 of them. How many dependencies are here? Essentials and forms. So the new template comes with essentials now. So okay, cool, it's done. So we can run this again, and this isn't still updated. Remember, if you're having this targeting property, you need to update your Xamarin Forms to the latest, which is I think 4.5, because this is a new or more recent feature. Yeah, 4.5. So this is going to build now, and anytime today. So why this is building is, you can imagine the different applications of this. You can use this mainly, it really comes in handy, not mainly, but it comes in handy for me, is when you're having adaptive layout. So your phone has rotated, your screen rotated, and you need to do something. Oh, I need to adapt my layout to this new whatever is happening. You can use this state manager. So if the elements have different states, then you can change them to whenever they want. So here, so if it's in the red state, so what is happening here is I'm getting an element outside of this element, a different element in the hierarchy, and then changing the text what I am red. Green, same thing, and then blue, same thing. So it comes in really handy. Now I mentioned that this comes in handy if you have like an adaptive layout. You can really come in handy. So I would also try and give a quick example on how that should work. So now we have our stack layout. I don't need any of this for now, or do I? No. So we have our stack layout, and we have 2 elements. Let's say box view, height request, fill. Sorry, wrong. Height request 50 and width request 50. Sure, this makes sense. Background color red. Awesome. And then let's say we have some other one, background color blue. Vertical options, fill and expand. And for the blue, we want it to also fill. Where has the blue gone to? The green is there. So now we have our, by default, the orientation is vertical, red up and blue down. So we want to say, oh, okay, when this is, the strange part is when this is landscape, we still have it up and down. But ideally, it's on landscape, we would like to have it the same way, but then right to left and not top to bottom still. So what then do we do? Is we can have different group for that. I'm here, Visual State Manager dot Visual State groups, and then I'm having a Visual State group. I can name this whatever I want. It's just an indication, orientation, or adaptive layout. So this can be whatever name you want it to be, and then within the group I have a Visual State dot Visual State dot setters. So my first state can be called portrait. Now it's saying is when I'm in the portrait mode, when I'm in the portrait state, what do I want to do? I want to set the property of the orientation of this stack layout to vertical, so it shows top to bottom, which is fine, good and fine. And then here I'm saying what I'm in a state called landscape. Again, the names can be whatever you want it to be, but it's most likely preferable to name it something that relates to what you're talking about. So orientation, I want it to be horizontal. Yep. So when I'm in the proper in the landscape state, let it be oriented horizontal, so it doesn't show top to bottom, it shows left to right. And then it's now, how do I detect if I'm in the landscape or in the portrait mode? Simple. I don't need these bad boys. Now you have a size change event handler in every Xamarin apps, which we can trigger into, and then we were saying this. Okay, so when it's size change, how do we know if it's portrait or landscape? So we can say string state equals to, if the width of this is greater than the height, then it's landscape. So if it's longer than it's tall, then we want to go to landscape, else we're going to portrait. So basically, is this tells us the state we want to go to. It's just basically an indicator to say we're in landscape, we're in portrait. And then I call my Visual State Manager, go to states. Now for the first element, we are passing the element we want to work with. So we need to be able to identify this element. We have to give this stack layout a name, so it's identifiable. So main layout. Now we can call it main layout and then go to this particular state. Fine. I'll put a breakpoint here so we can see whenever this is fired. Now it's building. So when it's in the portrait state, we want to do this top to bottom. When it's landscape, we want to go left to right. Waiting for the debugger to connect. And any minutes now. Yep. So now the size change event is firing, and we can see the width is, what's the width? Width is 414, and then the height is 896. So in this case, the height is taller, so it's in portrait mode, and it fires in the portrait. It fires the portrait state. I can take this two out. Seems to be slowing things down. So it's portrait, which is good and fine. Now if we're rotating this, it becomes left to right, although it's messed up the entire thing. Yeah, but then it's showing, it's now left to right, and then if we take this back to portrait, it's showing top to bottom. So with this way, we can have different states. So to make this even more interesting, we can say, okay, when is landscape? We want to just fill everything for this stack class, so we don't have this issue here. So, why does it not occupy everywhere? We need to add the horizontal option for this as well, because it's vertical now, so it's filling everywhere. But then when the orientation is horizontal, we also need to fill it to prevent that shady behavior. With hot reload, I don't need to rebuild my app, so this just works fine. Now if I'm landscape, now it's left to right. If I'm portrait, it's straight top and bottom. So with this, you can have different kind of adaptive layouts for your different elements. You don't have to depend on the Android whatever to help position your elements, right? In normal Android or with Android Studio, you would have to have a layout for landscape and a layout for portrait and a layout for this and this. But with the state manager, you can detect these changes and then trigger whatever state you want. I think this basically gives the foreground or background of how states managers work. You can use this for different aspects, in form validations, in input validators, in whatever. The documentation as well has different examples. You can look at it. Feel free to look at it. It helps you understand it more, and you can always leave a comment if you don't understand something, and I can always explain better. So that will be all for now. Feel free to reach me and comment, and if you have requests on what other subjects you're not very clear with, I can also take requests to make more videos. So until next time, see ya.